Before I start this painting, or really any major painting, I like to do a study or just some color swatches. So let's take a look at what we have here. This is the printout I did on my printer at home from the photograph, which is right here. You guys can see this. You can see I cropped it considerably to what I wanted to focus on in my painting. I'm just going to put that up here for now. And I did this painting, many years ago based on the same photograph. So many things wrong with it, but I liked some of the colors I used. So I did like what I did here on her dress. Even though it shows black here, when you're painting, try to think in terms of not just one solid color. Even though her dress is black, try to mix it up a little bit. So I decided to go more with a navy blue, dark brown, dark blue. So what I'm going to do when I do color studies, I basically just wet this part of the paper, and I can see that it's wet because the paper is shiny, and I did a little premix of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna to get this dark. Now that seems pretty liquidy, doesn't it? I don't like it that liquidy. And then I sometimes just run the colors in like that, and that's a lot of water. I think I have way too much water in my mix, but these are just color swatches to get an idea of what is going to go on when I start painting this. I'm going to dab some burnt sienna in there, and as you can see, if you're happy mixing colors like this, that's fine. Some people don't like to mix color on an individual basis, so they go ahead and buy a tube, say, of, oh, Payne's Gray. I never recommend black. I hate using black because I know I can make dark color using my watercolors. All right, so that's kind of what I'm going to do there. I did like, I'm going to try to keep this background diffused even though it's very dark here. I did like what I did here. I did more burnt sienna, and I'm also seeing a little bit of this red, which is an alizarin crimson. So let's go ahead and stay with this color palette, less water, and I'm going to just mess around a little bit, for lack of better art terms, and see if I just did darks like this. And that to me is certainly not dark enough, but enough for a color study. I want my backgrounds really diffused. I tend to not make them very soupy, very wet. I tend to like to use a dry piece of paper and a drier brush, and maybe just throw a little bit of red in there. And see, it starts turning kind of purplish. And again, I'm just experimenting. What would that background look like? I like keeping diffused backgrounds. All right, maybe that's something good there that we can use. Trying to keep the white of the paper for her hair, but we are looking here at some skin tones. Kind of tricky maybe. Oh, first of all, let's get some of this drip up. Okay. All right. Skin tones. Let's focus on this umbrella. And what I'm trying to do here, I'm trying to keep my color palette really limited by using the same colors: ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, alizarin crimson. I'm just playing right now with these stripes as if the umbrella was already painted. This helps me learn what my painting will be like, what I have to deal with. Since I've done about three or four versions of virgin paintings, versions of this, I feel comfortable just messing with the color right now. Nothing spectacular. I can always adjust it, but these are initial washes, these are initial color mixes. I'm getting kind of nervous about doing this. I know my bucket's going to be in the same color family with this alizarin crimson, but you know that bucket's going to have a little bit of purple in it on the bottom. I like using purple, so I mix alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue. fur kind of purple. And let's see what we got here. And the bottom of the bucket, maybe not. Too purple. That would make a nice shadow right there. I'm going to use these shadows for other things besides that bucket. And you can always throw a little bit of burnt sienna in there. It'll brighten it up. And sometimes I recommend to my students that they paint components of what it is that they're painting. In other words, practice painting that bucket. Now see, that bucket's not the right shade. It's more purple. Here we go. I'm going to flip this over. Why am I flipping this over? Because I can, and because it's kind of neat to see how the colors blend. I blend on paper. I do not necessarily blend in the palette. I'll mix colors in the palette, but I let the paint and the watercolor kind of do the work. Like this. Turn that upside down. Not going to kill us. Pick up some of this drip. I'm just using plain old paper towels. Pick up some of this drip here. And again, this is certainly not the finished product. This is just playing with the color, doing color studies. I use cheaper paper on my color studies, or the backs of paper of backs of paintings that I don't like because I'm cheap. Okay, let's say I'm frugal, not cheap. There's a little bit of green in here. I think it's going to be a mixture of just some sap green. Maybe I'm going to make a little darker on the side. And this is kind of what my palette's looking like. There's my sap green, then I'm putting in ultramarine blue for a dark. I'm going to keep these colors here, but this is sort of in the general area of where I'm going to have these various containers. As I see them here in this painting I did of it, I used just blue and green. And yeah, I'm hanging on to my water bottle because I like to keep my wells damp of my paint a little bit so they don't dry out, so they flow better. Let's see, I'm going to wet a spot here. I'm hoping it turns out to be a square spot. You never know. And there's some green there, and I could also put some darks in here. It's just following this basic color palette, like that. A little adjustment there. And I'm going to do some more color mixing than I did on the original one. Maybe I'm going to throw some burnt sienna into that green mixture to darken it even more. Again, just playing around with the color, nothing specific. What's left? These lovely green leaves. Oh, just for the heck of it, I'm going to draw. I think that's leaf lettuce. Not sure. Draw some leaf lettuce. Okay, so maybe we start out with a little lemon yellow at the top of the leaf lettuce, depending how the light's hitting it. You know, and sometimes lettuce isn't perfectly green either, or it's starting to go. I have a little bit of viridian in here too. Not sure I like that. My point of this painting, besides capturing this woman that's so busy looking at her produce that she's going to be selling, is to try and keep the colors loose. You can see I'm just working with a wet brush. This brush is a very old, I want to say 20 years old, Grumbacher Golden Edge, not a sponsor. Grumbacher makes a great, reasonably priced product. I believe they're US made, for those of you who are curious. And it's a synthetic, so it'll hold up pretty well, but I take great care of my brushes, if I do say so. All right, so okay, I'm liking that. Has a possibility of lettuce. So the worst, the worst thing and the biggest challenge for me is, how am I going to paint the face? Well, I'm going to do studies of the face later, but I'm just going to do a shape here. I'm not going to do the entire face. You may not be able to see the drawing, but And again, this is not anything special. It's kind of loose. I am not a painter of faces. I am not a painter of figures. That's a little challenge for me. But I like to use a mixture when I do these things of alizarin crimson, little burnt sienna, and sometimes a little bit of yellow. And just for initial washes. I'm going to go ahead and do that here to see if I like it. That to me might be a little pink. I don't know. That's a little too yellow. I'm going to lift that up with a paper towel. And I'm kind of painting wet on dry. I'm not being too particular because I'm just trying to get some skin tone in here. You know, one side of her face is going to be a little darker. When I do faces, I tend to probably overwork them because my confidence level is not very high. But I also have learned that you need to do a lot of washes, at least for me, because I'm still in the I don't know what I'm doing stage. The burnt sienna can make a nice dark without overdoing it. And I had some purple in there, and I'm just adding some dark on the side of the nose, under the mouth. And again, this is not, oh, you're going to look at this and go, my goodness, that's not perfect. And I might bring some up to the hairline. She has gray hair. I'm going to keep a lot of that hair white, but also with gray hair, I'm going to mix a little bit of burnt sienna and ultramarine blue to get shadows. Now, when I finish all these studies, and I keep these over the years because I refer back to them, I make notes. What did I do here? I did, the face was burnt sienna. I recommend that you do this. Burnt sienna, and it was lemon yellow, and it was also alizarin crimson. And I have abbreviations that I use for my colors, but I'm writing these out for your sake. And the hair was white primarily of paper. I'm big on white on paper, white of paper. Do not use white watercolor if you can help it. That's old school, but that's what I do. And it was ultramarine blue. I'm just going to call it ultra blue. And burnt sienna gives you a gray. And my lettuce was lemon yellow, and then it gradiated down to sap green, and then it was a mixture of sap green plus ultramarine blue. I call it ultra blue. This is was sap green plus ultramarine blue, and drop some burnt sienna. I'm running out of places to write. That's typical for me. This was ultramarine blue. We're going to call it ultra blue plus burnt sienna. I could go darker on this, and I think I'm going to go darker on this when I paint her dress, but for now that's how I'm keeping it. This was a combination of the same colors plus alizarin crimson, alizarin crim, and this is alizarin crimson plus some burnt sienna, and this was, there's a spot there. It's also on my hand, it happens. Alizarin crimson with, let's see, ultramarine blue in there. So there's a basic color study. That gives me a little roadmap on my colors that I want to use on this particular painting. And I'm going to keep it this limited color palette. If you do too many colors in a painting, sometimes they don't work together. It's not a cohesive look. The less colors you use in your painting, the more cohesive your final painting will be. the next step is going to be taking that sketch that I did and starting to lay in some color.